word choice, and register. And tonight you're going to hear a little bit of my cat protesting because he would rather that I were quiet than I was recording, but I'm just going to record anyway. What is writing? Writing is words on a page, in order, in sentences, in paragraphs. Nothing more, nothing less. That's it. That's Les Miserables. That's the Kelley Blue Book. That's the Declaration of Independence. That's the Bible. That's Shakespeare. Joy and misery, freedom and inspiration from just words. Words on a page inspire people to live and to die. One of my favorite last lines was said by Hugh Latimer, Bishop of Worcester, who was burned as a heretic in 1555 by Mary Tudor, Queen of England. He and a friend were executed together, and he said to his friend, "Be of good comfort, Master Ridley, and play the man. We shall this day light such a candle by God's grace in England as, I trust, shall never be put out." I've always admired his bravery. That is a tough way to die, and his words were repeated long after his death and written down. They are both an allusion to the way he was going to die and a metaphor for a hopeful future. I hope you never run into this moment, but we can admire those people who are able to choose the right word for the right moment. Well, let's take a slightly less serious tack and ask, what is good writing? Is it correct, clear, and precise? Is it powerful and persuasive? Well, of course it should be both. It should catch your mind and eye and heart. Now, just like a bug on the camera lens, you don't want errors or mistaken judgments to get in the way of the amazing view you are creating with your words. In this lecture, we're going to talk about diction and register. Diction is word choice. Register is the level of formality you are choosing. So let's start with register. There are generally 4 registers: formal, neutral, informal, and casual or intimate. To greet someone formally, you might say, "How do you do?" A neutral register would be, "Hello." Informal might be, "Hi." And casual or intimate might be, "What's up?" I don't know if you have seen this, but there is a fun little scene in My Fair Lady where the flower girl Eliza tries her best to speak with perfect formal English and says to each person at the Ascot races, "How do you do? How do you do? How do you do?" Register isn't an exact set of categories. There are discourses that float between neutral and informal, or they float between informal and casual, but for the most part we tend to write in neutral or formal tone rather than informal or casual writing in academic settings. In this class, it's perfectly acceptable to stay in a neutral tone, and it's fine to take a formal tone. In the next lectures on writing, I will teach you a little bit more about how to adopt formal writing styles. A formal register is a combination of more abstract words and more stylized grammar. To stay in the formal register, you are likely to use periodic or balanced sentence styles, and you are likely to use words with Greek or Latin roots. And words have roots or sources. English is a remarkably rich language because it has many roots. The 4 big contributors are Greek, Latin, Anglo-Saxon, a German precursor, and French. Greek and Latin are sprinkled into English because many of the original writers in our society learned Greek and Latin to study the Bible and ancient Greek and Roman texts. They were the ones who were literate and carried their vocabulary into ordinary everyday life. These 2 languages were carried into culture by churchmen and later scientists. Anglo-Saxon comes from the Angles and the Jutes, who invaded England after Rome fell, and the Romans left England. They came from the area of modern Germany. French in English comes from the Normans, originally Norsemen or Northmen. They were the Vikings who settled in France after the 700s and later invaded England in 1066. So these 4 big language streams, Greek, Latin, Anglo-Saxon, and French, correspond to historical movements in education. Words with Latin and Greek roots sound formal, and they're often used in scientific writing because Latin and Greek were still the language of science long after they had dropped out of every other usage. Words from Latin include circumnavigate and perambulate and longitude and altitude. Words from Greek include diagram and cathedral and episcopal and telescope. For what it's worth, Rome and Istanbul are the two World Heritage cities where those two languages kept ancient knowledge alive. Words with Anglo-Saxon and French roots sound more neutral and informal. They are ordinary or colorful or even a little bit romantic. Words from French are words like bachelor, gallery, magnificent, purify. Words from Anglo-Saxon are axe, board, bread, and drunk. As you're writing, you want to decide if you want to be formal or informal, and as you are reading back through your sentences, ask yourself if putting in a more formal or a more informal word will make your writing more lively or more serious, or in any way more powerful. After you've picked a register, formal or informal, choose words that evoke feelings or senses. Consider the peach. The peach can be juicy, or sweet, or delicious, or Georgia. A juicy, delicious, sweet Georgia peach. As a writer, love words and taste them to see if your writing will be remembered. Now I'd like to show you an article written by Adam Sternberg in 2014 about the history of emojis. It's called Smile, You're Speaking Emoji, and it was written for The New Yorker. He won a prize for this article, so I thought it was worth bringing to your attention. It has a lively, slightly zippy writing style. And of course he's writing about emojis, so he's going to be using emojis even though this is a formal article. Being published in The New Yorker magazine, he knows that his style can be a little informal, but his readers will generally be well educated. Let's take a look at the first paragraph. He says, consider the tilde. There it is, that little squiggle hanging out on the far upper left-hand side of your computer keyboard. That's informal. The next sentence is a little bit more formal. He says, the symbol dates back to ancient Greece, though the tilde comes from Spanish, and in modern English it's used to indicate approximately, e.g. approximately 30 years, or equivalence, x is equivalent to y, in mathematics. The next sentence continues with a formal tone, and the next paragraph more or less stays there in the formal tone as well. But the third paragraph is where he's going to show all the emojis. Here he turns back to an informal tone and he says, and that's just one emoji. If we count all emoji together, smiling face with smiling eyes, and grinning face and winking face, and smiling face with heart-shaped eyes, and kissing face with closed eyes, and face with stuck-out tongue with tightly closed eyes, not to mention house with garden, and convenience store, and tram, and love hotel, and ghost, and money with wings, and chart with upward trend, and hamburger, then emoji as a group are now used more frequently on Twitter than are hyphens or the numeral 5. Now he used a special technique there. It's a sentence that is called the periodic sentence, in which the main idea falls toward the end of the sentence, and that's how he achieved the surprise about the numeral 5. He had that big long list ahead of it. There's lots more to say about this article. It's really fun and well written, and if you'd like to look it up, I will leave a note to show you where it can be found. So what you've learned in this lecture is that you should choose striking, memorable, and powerful words suited to your audience and purposes. You can do that by choosing whether you are using Greek or Latin or French or Anglo-Saxon root words, and you may not always know, but you will know that words that have 3 or more syllables are often Latin or Greek rooted words. You may also be thinking about whether or not you want to use a formal or informal register, and of course you want to pick evocative and lingering adjectives. And for this class and for most academic classes, do stick with a neutral or formal tone.